Yo, what it is, everybody? Thanks for tuning back in here to another episode here on the Speedbug channel. Today we got a special guest today. We got the Ducati V4 on the channel, and we're going to ask it some serious questions and talk about its problems and drug problems and recalls and relapses that it consistently has to have. So it has been brought to my attention that you've been on the show many times before, and we want to know, why is it that you haven't even been out for a year and you already have 5 recalls? So that's what we're going to cover here today on the Speedbug channel. So everyone, thank you for tuning in, and let's go ahead and get this show commenced. So to start, my name is Speedbug for all of you that don't know, and again, we have the beloved and overhyped Ducati V4. So let me first and foremost ask, why do you have 5 recalls? I'm sorry, I don't recall. Now it's a little shy, but let's ask one more time. Why do you have 5 recalls?
Because I'm such a piece of shit.
Well, at least it acknowledges that it's a piece of shit and it has all kinds of problems. So, another question I'm going to ask. 1,200 miles that you currently have on you, why do you consistently always have to have your chain tightened and bolts and shit becoming loose all the time? I'm sorry, what was that?
Because I'm such a piece of shit.
Well, that makes a little bit more sense.
I'm overpriced, I'm unengineered, and I can't compete with the Japanese bikes.
Did y'all hear that? I can't believe that. I can't believe it. Well, at least there's a little bit of truth into the problems that you are absolutely having. But we understand that you're pretty, you're bougie, you have to be, flawless. You definitely fit with that Miami, LA lifestyle, and that's exactly why you look good when you're sitting still. But if the wind blows or if anyone looks at you wrong, you're probably going to fall apart. Exactly. So, but anyway, let's move on to the actual recalls and such like that. So we have 5 recalls actually for this motorcycle. I don't know why the hell I'm even holding this, but I'll just be real with you guys. We got 5 recalls actually here on this bike, and I wanted to kind of address this and talk about it with you guys, because 5 recalls, and again, it's always better to have a recall than to actually not have one. And you guys, I pick on this bike, I say it's a shit box or this, that, whatever. Again, just as many good traits as this bike has, it has as many bad traits. So it's not the worst bike, but it's definitely not the best bike, and it does very well with what it was engineered to do. Obviously, be on the racetrack, crouched down, going fast, but everything else, being a street bike, absolutely not. And I've covered that in many of my videos. This is pretty much a race bike with lights on it, and that's exactly, again, what makes it so great and dominant, on a closed, tight circuit racetrack. What makes it such a shitty street bike. So it's really not that big of a deal. So let's get into the recalls. Now I have my phone here, and I'm actually going to read these so I don't mess up any of the verbiage or anything like that. But these are directly from the NHTSA.gov website, and these are the actual recalls listed. And you can see these as well if you would like to read about them in further depth and detail. I'm not going to make a 50-minute video, but I'm just going to give a brief description on obviously what they are. So on April 16th, 2018, 2 recalls were issued for fuel sprays when cap is removed and fuel leak when tank breathing system valve plugs. So that was obviously an issue with the O-ring, and obviously a lot of pressure that would come out of the fuel tank during the time with the expansion from the fuel system. And when the bike gets extremely hot underneath the gas tank, it obviously causes the evap canister and the O-rings to purge out and expand, and it would give a scent of gas. It would smell like the bike was leaking fuel, and then sometimes when the pressure was so great, it would actually leak fuel, because when the tank would actually be pressurized and the tank was full, after the pressure would be, releasing through either the top and through the evap canister, but sometimes the fuel would actually be forced out. So Sometimes fuel would actually leak out. There's a few known instances, not very many, but there's actually a few that have actually been documented. So, and a fuel leak in the presence of ignition source can increase the cause of a fire. And of course, if fuel spills out of the tank when it's opened, it can increase the risk of a fire in the presence of any ignition source. So they have obviously addressed that and fixed that with new O-rings and things like that. But if your bike has not been taken in for service for that, you can go ahead and do that. As well, on January 19th, the rear brake friction material may detach actually from the metal backing plate. And then obviously that also increases the cause and risk of a crash by you not having rear brakes. Now, that's pretty messed up, but I don't really know if that's really a Ducati issue or more of a Brembo brake issue. Obviously, they go ahead and take the wheel off, go ahead and throw and slap a set of new pads on it, and obviously that issue has been rectified. Number 3, oil cooler port may crack and causing an oil leak. And obviously, engine oil leaking will obviously increase the risk of a crash. Now, that's kind of serious because that's right there at the bottom of the bike, and when you're flying, whether it's doing 20 miles an hour or 100 miles an hour, if that sucker leaks, it's going to trail towards the back of the bike and obviously be under the rear tire. Again, it's better to have the recall than to not have the recall, because if some shit happens, then obviously Ducati is really on the hook for it. So, again, that's just another one that is obviously coming out, and I'll touch a little bit more on that one coming up here. And the last one that obviously just came out is the timing chain tensioner may loosen and leak oil, and obviously leaking oil down the side of the bike and stuff like that, and go down and obviously be trapped against the rear wheel as well. Again, now people will argue and say, hey, this is a first year bike, all the problems come out within the first year. That's absolutely true. More problems come out in the first year of a production bike than any of them. However, I really think that a lot of these small things, and it has nothing to do with this one particularly, but even other Ducatis, it has definitely seemed like it's a lot of small, minute shit that just continuously goes wrong with these bikes, and which makes them not very practical for street riding. Now, when you're on the racetrack and you're racing and revving it out and stuff like that, you tend to take a little bit of a different maintenance schedule and maintenance strategy with your motorcycle or car, because you're racing it and pushing it to the limits. You're going to go over it and check on it every single time it goes out. You're going to look it over up and down, basically scrub it with a toothbrush every time it goes out, before and after it comes in from the track, to ensure it can obviously run at max capacity. So and again, I understand that this is a race bike, but this bike is actually sold still as a street bike. This is not the MotoGP version or any type of special edition. This bike has been passed through emissions, passed through DOT, and me personally, based on a lot of the other motorcycles and such that are out, it doesn't matter if it's Japanese or European or anything like that. It just seems like there's a lot of smaller things that continuously, go wrong with this motorcycle. And it's not that I haven't fixed or addressed a lot of them, because there are some things that I haven't documented and told you guys, but it's more of just an annoyance. And I feel that if I'm paying upwards of $30,000 for a motorcycle, a lot of these small issues could be worked out in quality control, whether it's bolts loosening, small things with oil leaks, excessive silicone, something not been tightened down all the way. And it has nothing to do with like the way it was shipped or anything, or what the dealership that has done. It's just you riding it, and sometimes I feel like it's like riding like an old Harley before they got rubber mounts, where everything was solidly mounted to the frame, and you'd be riding down the street and your mirrors and your pegs and shit be falling off, and it didn't matter how much Loctite you put on, it was just the excessive vibration that went through the motorcycle that caused the bolts to back out. Now, this bike does have some vibration, but nothing like an old Harley. But when you sit down and look at some of the bolts and nuts and things like that, and where they've used either magnesium or a super soft aluminum to shave weight and stuff like that, if you would have just maybe added just a little bit more material or something like that, and maybe the bike would have been 10 pounds heavier. Sure, for the street bike, that's perfectly fine, and it was given the bike maybe a little bit more reliability. But where things are cracking because the aluminum is so thin just to shave weight, and I can see it because obviously I've had all the fairings and everything off here. Fortunately, mine is not cracked, which I have obviously keeping an eye on, and I haven't taken this one in to get service for that yet, for the new intercooler, for its recall. But again, it's just an annoyance, and I feel that Ducati could have really done a much better job pushing this bike to the market and selling it with a little bit more better street manners to suit the normal rider. And some people say, well, the bike was kind of overhyped when it came out because it had big horsepower numbers and stuff like that. Well, horsepower don't mean shit without torque, and torque don't mean shit without horsepower. You got to have one to have the other. In my opinion, one is not more important than the other, and you shouldn't have more torque than more horsepower. You shouldn't have more horsepower than more torque. It's all about the application on what the motorcycle or the car is actually utilizing. But we all know horsepower sells numbers, torque doesn't. But torque is what you feel, not horsepower. Horsepower is a man-made calculation to replicate how much torque you can do, obviously, over time. That's what horsepower is. But if your bike makes 20 horsepower and 80 foot-pounds of torque, it's not going to sell, versus if the bike made 80 horsepower and 20 foot-pounds of torque. It's just the way people are. But until you actually understand, which a lot of you do that watch my channel, that one is just as important as the other, and obviously depending on what you're doing with it, and what the engine in the car or the motorcycle is actually utilizing. But back again to these recalls, again, 5 recalls, and the bike has been out for like 8 months. I think that's a little excessive, and I think maybe the bike was kind of rushed to the market to maybe take down the BMW, take down maybe some of the R1Ms, and maybe the Suzukis and the Kawasaki's and such like that. But I don't know, let me know what you guys think in the comments, because I'm sure you guys see me slam my V4 a lot and stuff like that, and in a sense I do sometimes think it is kind of a piece of shit. It's super pretty, but when you start to get into it and work on it and see a lot of the corners and things like that are cut, I see why they're cut. They're cut obviously for weight savings and with a race purpose in line, but I believe that Ducati could have saved a lot of that just solely for the racetrack, and put a little bit more back into it and made it a little bit more reliable and street friendly to do it. Now, some people will say, nope, that's absolutely like the wrong way Ducati works. And you're right, that's not the way their mentality is. They're like a race bike first, then street bike second. So, and I knew that buying this bike and riding other Ducatis, and to me it's no different than my 959 as well. So, at the same time I can't be mad at it, but at the same time I kind of wish that they would have just gone a little bit more and taken an extra step to get that bike just a little bit more friendly for the street. And I think that it maybe wouldn't got such a bad rap. And it's not just me that gives this bike a bad rap. There are other fellow reviewing agencies and YouTubers and magazines that have kind of said the same thing, but there's also a lot of people that want to tiptoe against this bike or tiptoe against the brand because they think Ducati is like the holy grail brand and stuff like that. Let me tell you something, working on all motorcycles and stuff like that, which I have, I've wrenched on pretty much every brand that there is out there, and I can tell you this is far from the best, okay? And I've probably rated, as far as a mechanical wise, probably more towards the bottom. But again, when you're racing, it's completely different. Your reliability and drivability, engineering and functionality is completely different from something that's designed to run 100,000 miles versus something that's designed to make 200 horsepower and only run 10,000 miles. So you got to give and take, and absolutely. So I understand exactly where they're going with it and what they're doing, but let's hope that there aren't too many more recalls. But if there is something significant, obviously I hope Ducati does go on ahead and take care of those, because it definitely is a safety issue, and I'm happy that they are issuing them. And if you know what, if there's 5 more that come out, hey, as long as they fix it and they recognize it, I'd rather, again, like I said, I'd rather have it fixed and recognized and have the shit, you know, taken care of at the dealership than me go fly down the racetrack or fly down somewhere else and this thing blows a hole through the oil pan, or, you know, a connecting rod bolt comes loose and something like that, and then I eat shit all because, hey, they wanted to keep their mouth shut. No, no, no. So I'm definitely going to keep an eye on the 2019 version, which I'm sure they've addressed a lot of these issues. Like, they fixed the O-rings inside of the gas tank, they fixed the gas tank vapor leak and things like that. And I'm pretty sure coming up on the 19th, so I know for the sure for the 2020s, they're not going to reuse the same old crappy oil cooler, not intercooler, excuse me. So, and other, you know, vast things that their test bikes and long-term motorcycle magazines and other YouTubers and stuff that they pay attention to, they're going to listen and address these issues just as any manufacturer does, and make the improvements obviously for the next year so that they don't have to issue those recalls, and the bike is obviously much safer. So again, you know, for the other people that have this bike, let me know what you guys think. I know there's a few out there that do have the V4, and some that have actually been inspired by my channel that have went and got this V4, and even the ones that, you know, that I have talking to in person or via direct message, they'll say the same thing. It's a great bike, it's a pretty bike, it's definitely just not a street bike. And obviously that's why you guys know that I had it listed for sale. And you see I'm still making this video, and the thing is still listed for sale. It's just pretty much listed for sale here on YouTube. So again, if somebody wants to buy it through YouTube or something like that, but no, I haven't listed it online or anything like that. So, but I'm not going to give it away. I'm not going to sell it for $9,000 or $10,000. I'll just, you know, keep it for that price. I'll put it in my living room, as I've mentioned before. But again, as much as as many flaws as it has, I like all of its flaws, because in my eyes, that's exactly what makes it so great in all those other areas, where some of the other bikes don't do those things and make it up in other areas. And that's why I have a plethora of bikes to cross off all the things that I want to do here on my bucket list in my garage. So, but I think that's going to wrap it up here with the interview with the beloved Ducati V4. And I hope you guys found this informative. Again, if you guys want to see the recalls, just head over to the government website. You can just type in Ducati V4. It's the 2018 model minus 2018 model, and you can read up further about how many claims that there have been done and how many bikes that it actually has been affected by. So, and I will actually post that link to the website, and you can check it for all vehicles. So I will post that link in the description of this video. So that's going to wrap it up here for today's video. If you guys like what you saw, again, don't forget to subscribe, give it a like, Facebook, Instagram, at the Speedbug, same name here as YouTube. And we will see my counterpart here. Hopefully she will have her act together a little bit more in the future. And we'll check you here for another episode here on the Speedbug channel. Deuces, guys.